Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and we've now gotten our first official look at Venom 3's logo, and it is exponentially becoming the craziest film Sony Marvel has ever made, considering all the weird places Madam Web and Kraven are taking us, and the unresolved questions we have after Venom Let There Be Carnage, and Morbius, who is really pulling the strings of the Sonyverse, and how many of those 80 billion light years of hive mind among symbiotes in different universes will it take to screw in a light bulb above God of Story Loki's head and that Keebler elf tree in Venom 3, because I assume he's going to make a cameo in it because crazier things have happened. Hey, cheers. This is the sneak peek where we will take the temperature of whatever we are watching while we look ahead into the next week of nerddom. Joining me, my co-host, Jessica Clemens.
You, not only did you say a mouthful and a lot of very important details, but the most important detail was the Keebler elf tree. And you calling Loki basically a Keebler elf.
He is.
That is insane of you to
Don't
say.
light any fires in that tree. We saw in the movie Elf, that's how people burn.
That's insane.
Don't do that. But hey, if you need some water to put out any fires or quench any thirst, thank you to Air Up for sponsoring this video. You may notice Jessica and I hydrating from these Air Up bottles. They have these little scent-based flavor rings. Yeah.
Look, I gotta call it out. I've been drinking from this Air Up bottle this whole video, and I can't pretend I'm not. Air Up sponsoring today's video, and thank you for that, but I also stole this one from the office, and now I'm the one in my friend group who's like, wow, water's kind of great, huh? I wasn't always that way. Air Up did it to me, and like, good, because I feel so much better drinking water all day than I did after 6-pack of like Diet Coke, you know what I'm saying? Air Up uses your senses of smell to make your water delicious. There's no sugar, calories, or junk making Air Up a healthy alternative to sugary flavored beverages. It's just plain water. But Air Up's revolutionary hydration system lets you choose what flavor you want it to be from a variety of tasty flavor pods. You just pop the pod on your Air Up bottle and activate it, then sip, don't tip. The bubbles carry up the scent to your nose and your brain makes the flavor. Isn't that insane how our bodies work? My favorite flavor is the orange vanilla swirl. It just reminds me of like a sherbet on a nice sunny day, and it tastes delicious, and I know it's just the scents in my nose. To get an Air Up of your own, just click the link in the description below. I'm eating ice cream. Or am I?
This seems to be like the Venom official title logo for the third Venom film. This comes to us by way of Collider. It looks like there's a Venom 3, and the 3 is an exponent, which you could take this a couple different ways, right? You could do, is this like Venom cubed? Like Venom is now on an X, a Y, and a Z axis into three-dimensional space, which he already is, but is this like another dimension of Venom that we're getting? Could it be a nod to the Alien 3 title logo, the David Fincher Alien film where Ripley goes to the prison colony? Before we started rolling, Jessica and I started debating the Alien franchise.
It's insane that you think the second one's the best one.
I think the first one is the best, but second one is the second best.
I mean, yeah. It's second place for a reason. I thought you meant the second one.
Wow.
I thought you meant the second one was better than the first one. I was like, I am not, no offense to that little girl. She's amazing. I am not choosing that plot over the first one. The first one was so good. What was it, Dashiell? Who did the first one? Who did the second? Well, James Cameron did the second one. First one was Ridley Scott. And that's enough to tell you why the first one's better. And that's all I'm saying there.
Wow.
I have
Jessica
internal
thinks
beef with
that
James
the guy who directed Prometheus and Alien Covenant is a better director than the guy who did Titanic.
Yours?
And
no, okay. You're leaving out some other words, like the worst of the Terminator movies. The worst of the Terminator movies. James Cameron.
What are you talking about? James Cameron made the best of the Terminator movies. T2 Judgment Day is by far, it's the only good Terminator movie, I would say.
Okay, now we have
the first Terminator's not that good.
Terminator 2. Okay, Terminator. Okay, I don't know. I don't know if that's actually. I would stand on those grounds. Terminator 2 has some shitty dialogue, and it's enough to make me be like, I hate this movie.
Oh. Well, you can't, I mean, look, all of James Cameron's movies have some shitty dialogue. The guy just is kind of weird, but like you have to just like let go of that and just like.
No! I've seen The Abyss. I've seen The Abyss.
Yeah, we've all seen The Abyss.
I've seen that dialogue. He's good at math, and that is great of him. He is a lunatic of a man, and I'll give him that. He just tweeted, when the submarine crashed, he tweeted immediately and was like, well, here's what you did wrong. And I said, James, read the fucking room.
Right. Not James Cameron's best. I think we can agree. Not his best moment. Okay, we've gotten off.
Sorry,
we've gotten off the rails. We're talking Venom 3. So just to catch us up from what happened in Venom Let There Be Carnage, you know, Woody Harrelson played Cletus Cassidy, the serial killer. He escapes They have a big brawl, and the movie ends basically. I'm summarizing so much of that movie because it's not like you guys care that much what happened in Venom: Let There Be Carnage. There was just carnage, and they fought, and then they end up with Eddie and Venom on a Mexican beach as they were talking to each other. They learn to finally come to terms with the Lethal Protector superhero name, which gets referenced in the Spider-Man No Way Home post-credit scene where they were talking about Iron Man and Hulk and Thanos, and he's like, wait, you think that's a better name than Lethal Protector? Like, they're still debating the Lethal Protector as a name. Really, the one line comes from that Venom Let There Be Carnage post-credit scene where he says 80 billion light years of hive mind across multiple universes. That kind of, I think it was establishing that the Venom symbiote has the same kind of arachno frequency that's fueling it as does like the Spider-Verse. And Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Miguel O'Hara's canon event school project that he displayed definitely showed various Venom symbiote infections that were considered canon events within the Spider-Verse. Arachno-humanoid polymultiverse is his term for it. And one of them included Tobey Maguire pulling the Venom goo off his face in Spider-Man 3. So I think it's establishing that like the Venoms are through this like web of life and destiny connected to the Spider-Verse, even if in the Tom Hardy Venom films, he did not get his powers by jumping onto like a Spider-Man at any point. It just directly latched onto Eddie Brock.
100%.
But the point is, somewhere else he did. And I guess that was enough to get inducted into the citizenship test of all of the Spider-Verse.
Wasn't there a piece of symbiote that was left at some point in Carnage?
In the MCU, in the Spider-Man No Way Home post-credit scene, after he goes back to his universe, there's a little bit of goo that's left behind.
Oh my God, is that the cube?
I think like, the idea is that there are like pieces of Venom that are scattered across the multiverse, and that Eddie Brock's little human brain is just going to get overwhelmed with like alternate life paths of other Venoms and other things that have happened, and that he's going to like, when he started to come to terms with this other Venom voice in his head, now he's going to have voices from every Venom, Topher Grace Venom from somewhere else that's just going to be echoing through his mind.
I get that like Tom Holland had like a 3-part origin, is getting like a 3-part origin story, right? He got 3 movies that is basically like, oh, here's the beginning of what Spider-Man is. And for Venom, it feels kind of like the same way with the symbiote. It feels like we're just getting the origin story. The 3rd episode can't be another like origin kind of story, right? It has to be supporting what's currently going on. So do you think that?
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, it has to be. Do you think I'm trying to acknowledge that maybe this is the introduction of like, they're actually going to go fight KNULL, right? Or like, we're going to see
Oh, yeah.
We're getting ramped up for that, or something that can continue, because as Madam Web's coming out and we're making the web of the Spider-Verse, I'm like, they have to make the jump. At the 3rd Venom movie, you guys got to make the jump. You can't be standing here still.
Right. We need to dive into cosmic horror. A battle with KNULL makes perfect sense. That's where I want things to go as well. I don't need like an Eddie Brock origin story. We already saw enough of an origin story. But I think what he's going to learn in Venom Cubed, whatever we call it, is that his story is not like the classic Eddie Brock origin story, that he was kind of an aberration from the norm. And much like Miles Morales realizing that his life story was like an aberration from the norm. And I hope the MCU says the same thing, that an MCU without X-Men was an aberration from the norm. And that all these things, just because, in the past, the studios weren't really working together and they couldn't have certain characters in that universe, it made like these incomplete universes. But I think a really cool way that they could fix that is just by saying like, yeah, in your universe, you were incomplete, but there is another universe out there that was complete. And I think that's what we're going to learn about Eddie Brock in this movie too. Like, you should have been in a universe that had a Spider-Man in it. He was supposed to be like your mortal enemy, and you just don't have that. You are now haunted by these like Elseworld battles between Elseworld yous and other like young photographers who work for the Daily Bugle, and that's going to freak Eddie out.
Do you think so? But there's no way to put him back in the right universe. He's going to just die.
I think he'll stay in his universe, but I think his mind is just going to be like, like in Everything Everywhere All at Once, how her mind is just leapfrogging around to different versions of herself. I think that's kind of what Eddie Brock is going to go to. This keeps happening in Hollywood, where big movies come out, and like it happened with Inception, right? After Inception, there was like 3 to 4 years of a bunch of movies that were all trying to do what Inception did.
Absolutely.
And none of them were that good. I think Everything Everywhere All at Once was like the first really, really good multiverse movie that was in live action. that like did it well, and the rest of Hollywood just kind of recognized its greatness.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to start to see that play out in other movies that try to also do the multiverse. They're going to be like, oh, why don't we just do what they did in Everything Everywhere All at Once? And I think they're going to pull Tom Hardy through that kind of journey that Michelle Yeoh went through.
Sony. Sorry, not at all to be negative to Sony, you guys. I'm so sorry. But like, you think the Sony's going to try grabbing kind of what Everything Everywhere All at Once did in Venom? That would be insane. I could see Ed Hardy, because he's co-writing it. I could see Ed Hardy being like, I can do this. And I'm like,
I think like Sony already has like a functional multiverse landscape with the Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse. And a lot of people say, well, those were as good of multiverse movies, if not better. Yeah, they have been really good. But in live action, it needs to kind of take a different texture. And they want to ground, especially if you have like a star like Tom Hardy, is they want to figure out, how do I internalize that in my performance? I don't think you could just show Tom Hardy Into the Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse and he's going to know how to like perform that in front of a camera. But if you show him everything all at once, he's going to be like, oh yeah, I know how to do that.
I know how to do that. That was my British accent that didn't come off British at all. In your video, when you start talking about the web of life, which I also talk about in my video, I was like, that makes more sense for the live action to get into, and that keeps this, not the streams, but it keeps them distant for right now. The animation can keep doing what they want to do in the Sony Marvel universe, and the live action is going to touch on the web of life. And I could see, do you think that Venom, you kind of said it with Across the Spider-Verse, so Venom as a symbiote would be in the same web of life as the Spider-Mans would be? And maybe, Madam Web could see that and see him being in the wrong universe?
Yeah, I don't know if Madam Web is going to be like actively controlling everything, but I think she's going to be like just playing the harp strings as best as she can.
She's going to be guiding. What if it was his divine destiny to just be the symbiote? Do you think they guide the symbiotes too, not just the radioactive spider bites?
Yeah,
so like,
I think they do.
They choose who gets the symbiote?
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. Like, Venom 3 has the opportunity to establish the origin of that by saying KNULL is kind of like tied in with whatever the web of life and destiny is.
Yes.
Because there's enough universes where Venoms exist only because they first latched onto a Peter Parker before an Eddie Brock, that like tipped the scales in favor of all symbiotes who come to Earth everywhere being part of that web and life and destiny. It's almost like racial profiling from the point of, I don't know, this probably isn't a good example, but it's like, well, we know in the multiverse, enough of people like you tend to have to be bonded to a
Erik,
Spider-Man first, so that's enough.
Erik, stop. The example.
My throat was even like, stop it. Just stop talking.
Please. You were getting choked out like the fucking man in the black suit in the Madam Web trailer. I'm glad you acknowledged that. I was like, halfway through, I went, this is the third person he's choked underground, and I need someone to tell me I'm not crazy. And you were like, he keeps choking people. You were genuinely like, why does he keep choking people?
Stop choking people. We're talking about Ezekiel Sims, everybody. In this trailer, Ezekiel Sims he has one move. He picks up women by the neck and just chokes them and throws them down.
And chokes them. It's I don't know. Maybe once we see the movie, we'll recognize maybe his hand to throat is just the easiest option for him, but I don't think it is. I think it's just weird.
We're talking about Madam Web. We should remind everyone some updates we got from Madam Web. We saw this clip of Ben Wyatt from Adam Scott, who we're pretty sure is playing Uncle Ben in this movie. We don't know for sure, but roll the clip.
You have a winning personality. I guess I got yours by mistake.
Dakota Johnson's laugh is just not doing her any favors.
Leave her alone. Leave her alone.
That's right. She did all of us a favor by going after Ellen. She's a patron saint in our hearts.
She did what everybody in Hollywood is afraid to do. And that was take down Ellen DeGeneres.
How was the party? I wasn't invited.
Actually, no, that's not the truth, Ellen. You were invited.
I don't think so.
Ask everybody.
We should also acknowledge, according to Scooper Daniel RBK, Madam Web might have no post-credit scene, which big missed opportunity, Sony. Because, for a lot of people, that's the only reason they go see these movies.
Okay, hear me out. If KNULL is like the main goal, the biggest of all big bads, this is all being orchestrated to somehow do KNULL. It would make sense that like Venom, I keep thinking that Madam Web is going to be like the biggest thing for us right now because it's introducing just like a different look at the Spider-Verse. It's a different thing. If she's the one that watches people get guided into being bitten, that's insane. Watch it be in Venom. We actually get that like post-credit scene that's very important. And it's showing like, oh, Null's coming. Oh, he's coming. He's on his way. And then it doesn't need to be like addressed in Madam Web's movie. But also, what if they're lying? What if they're lying? And there is actually a post-credit scene.
I mean, it may just be like a press thing. Like Sony's done this before where they've shown movies to press but don't show the post-credit scene.
Yeah. What would you want the post-credit scene for Madam Web to be?
Null. I want it to be Web of Life and Destiny and or Null. Now, we're not going to get that shit.
Yeah. We're not
in Madam Web.
Not in Madam Web.
I don't really know who they're making Madam Web for, but it's definitely not people who know who Null is.
Do we not know who Null is? I guess
we
if people
know who Null is.
Well, yeah, because it's our job. But do you think the audience has seen all of the Sonyverse so far does not know who Null is? They don't know, like...
I think it's possible. I think there's a lot of people who go see Spider-Man movie. I mean, Null is a pretty deep cut. There's a lot of people in the comments who are like, I definitely know who Null is. Null is the symbiote god, everyone.
And that's it. I was like, I just assumed people knew what it was. I don't know. And Madam Web seems like, I feel like there's more to it that we're not. The trailer, and I get into this in my next video, the video that came out yesterday, that it's very confusing. The trailer is so much to take in. There's so much exposition in it, but it's also cut with time jumps. And you're just like, what am I looking at? And then once you finally figure out what you're looking at, a new thing pops up. And after researching it, I was like, oh, I get what they're trying to do. And especially if this is like her origin, if we see her later as the Madam Web that you want, Erik, the one in the chair. That is crazy.
I want old lady Joan Lee, Stan Lee's wife, voice the animated version of the character. I want crazy old lady in a machine chair who's from the multiverse. That's what I want.
And that's the thing is like, if I want Madam Web, yeah, this origin is great. Then the next, maybe not the next one, but eventually we will get the older version of Madam Web where she's proficient in her powers and it won't take her messing up a bunch, seeing fragments and maybe lying about what she's seen. And I think that's what this movie is going to be more about, is just like, oh, how she came to power. If they just threw Madam Web into the Sonyverse, we wouldn't know the hell she is. Only people that watch that old animation would. And I mean, that's fine, but it's like, we do need her origin story. We do need a little story.
I think Sony keeps doing this. Sony loves to cast young, hot, thin stars. It's like they saw Social Network and they're like, that Andrew Garfield's great. We will only cast whatever this generation's Andrew Garfield is in everything.
No. They are doing
they did.
They are doing it. They love it. They love that CW look. They love making their teenagers the hottest things.
They want everyone to be handsome and sexy. And I think it's like an international thing. I think it's like because Sony's an international company that there's just people who influence these decisions who are like, yeah, there may be nerds in North America who like that, but are people in Singapore going to line up to see this Uggo? No. Bounce them. Put Emma Stone in this movie.
Put Emma Stone in this movie.
Because I just think if you were to pitch to like just an audience who goes to see these movies, are you going to watch a Marvel movie if it is Dakota Johnson talking to Adam Scott about something that just seems like this weird, like they're both paramedics? Or we're going to put Helen Mirren in a crazy steampunk chair as she screams about cosmic webs.
But again, I guess you could
people
throw
would
her
line
in.
up for that movie.
That's true.
Huh?
I guess you could throw. I was gonna say, I guess you could throw her in just as that Helen Mirren, and then people would be like, I don't know who this character is, but I love her. This is the best thing. I don't know if a full movie was necessary, but Sony doesn't have any TV shows, so it's like, what were they gonna do?
I just don't need these characters to be sexy. Like, I
Make
don't
my
need them to be
characters ugly.
sexy. I don't care. I want them to be like freaks. Let's rewind the clock to the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, which I'm working on a video right now that just explores the whole history of how Tobey Maguire came into that role. Tobey Maguire, they had that trailer where he like got shredded, but Tobey Maguire looks kind of weird.
I was about to ask.
Such good casting for
I
that.
was about to ask. I was like, by freaks you mean Tobey Maguire? And then I had to catch myself because he is a freak. Tobey
He's
Maguire
got this interesting
is a
face
weirdo.
and an emotive and expressive face, but Hollywood used to do that. They cast Willem Dafoe and Tobey Maguire as the leads of that movie, and the most boring character in it was James Franco. Like, they didn't cast James Franco as Peter Parker, they cast Tobey. Like, we used to do that. We used to roll the dice on weird-looking people.
I love this logic of like, and if you put a pretty person in it, make them the worst character. Make them the boring person.
Make them the villain. Make them the friend.
Give me my odd-faced people back. Also, I guess, Tobey Maguire is just a weirdo, to be fair. To be fair.
It's why Robert Downey Jr. works as Tony Stark. Is Robert Downey Jr. a handsome fellow? His face works on screen. They have these weird algorithms where they like measure the ratios of your face and all this stuff. Like, they aren't putting this face in a movie. There's a reason they put Matt Pat in a movie, Five Nights at Freddy. They'll never put Eric Voss in a movie.
That's not fair. Matt Pat is very pretty.
Because my face is just stupid looking, and they don't want to put it on a screen. I would ruin the movie if you would put me in it.
You are
Matt
a pretty
Pat
boy.
looks so handsome. He looks so good in that cameo. Like, yeah, of course you could put him in a cameo.
Are a pretty person.
I eat too much junk food.
You do eat too much candy, but you are a pretty boy.
Don't put me in a movie. For the love of God, don't put me in a movie.
I don't like that I do like that our video, and don't like that our video is criticizing hot people.
I'm not criticizing hot people. I'm criticizing the studios for only caring about hot people. Like, Robert Downey Jr., though, he's an odd-looking fellow. He's got these interesting features that are not like, he's not like Chris Evans or Chris Hemsworth. He's just kind of weird looking.
He's just kind of weird looking.
I don't know.
Did you also see the runtime for Madam Web?
Yeah, it's the longest, but it's only like just shy of 2 hours. All of these movies have been so short.
I think they know why.
Hey, and we're criticizing Sony, but they're not sweating it. Like, they keep making these like hour 45-minute movies that just play again and again and again in theaters, and enough people see them, and they're low enough budget, and they're making money from them. And I think that's why their budgets are all pretty, like, I think they're all like just north of $100 million for their budgets.
Ooh,
and they look it, but the movies make money.
You said, I notice, but my mom doesn't, and she thinks Jason Momoa is hot. That's why I went and saw Aquaman 2. My mom was like, I just really want to see Jason Momoa. And I was like, okay, fine. The entire movie she was going, ooh. Those companies know what they're doing. They get people like my mom who just tune in because it's a giant hot man.
All right, we want to tease the slate coming out on New Rockstars this week. On Monday, we have our breakdown of X-Men The Last Stand. It's the third in our X-Men rewatch series. And you know what? I know a lot of you aren't crazy about X-Men The Last Stand, but this video is so good. We go into so much. There's a lot from this movie that I feel like they're going to bring back for the MCU, surprisingly. Speaking of Aquaman 2, we're also going to do a breakdown of Aquaman The Lost Kingdom because it's coming out on digital, and I didn't have a chance to see it when, it came out in theaters because baby was here, and I'm not going out to movie theaters right now. You crazy? But we're going to do a breakdown of that. And then following that, I think we owe it to our viewers to do a full assessment of the DCEU, the whole history of it, really what went wrong with that franchise. Because I think there's a lot of bad takes out there of like, well, they did this wrong, or they did this wrong, and there wasn't enough MCU, or it was like too much trying to be the MCU. And I think there's like a couple specific reasons that people just don't talk about, and that's why. We're going to do that. And then we're also going to try to do a breakdown of the Monarch series from Apple TV Plus, because that's going to tie in directly with Godzilla X Kong, and there's like all these like timeline implications. So we want to do like a breakdown of everything you need to know from Monarch, Legacy of Monsters.
That is a diverse week of content. That is everything. You're hitting almost every corner.
And then we'll probably have some like MCU theories about like who pooped in Thanos' mug. And you're going to love it. One thing I want to ask you about, Jessica, is you touched on the idea of KNULL, that Sony should bring in KNULL. But if you look at Sony's slate, doesn't it seem like they are so afraid of going into cosmic horror? Yeah. Something that I talk about in the X-Men The Last Stand breakdown is like how, other than the MCU and what they try to do in the DCEU, a lot of these other superhero movie franchises are like so insistent on trying to keep things grounded within grounded logic, because they're trying to do what Christopher Nolan did in the Dark Knight trilogy and just have like scientific explanations for everything. But I believe what made the MCU so great is that they just leaned into the idea that there could be cosmic gods out there or wormholes to other dimensions and shit like that. Do you think Sony would benefit from going more into cosmic horror, or should just do what it's currently been doing?
Well, it's interesting because when you're saying cosmic horror, we're two big things. So we're talking like godly horror. We're talking like can't be contained horror. Because I'm like, technically we kind of got thrillerish horror for Mobius. And
what I'm saying by cosmic horror is the acknowledgement that there are forces in the universe beyond our control or our understanding.
Yeah, I think the fear
that like
of
powers come from the cosmos.
Yeah.
Versus grounded is like it's some kind of psychological thing that I'm going through internally, or government experimentation led to this.
Yeah, I don't. It's like the fear I think that would come from it is it's such a big topic, and it kind of feels like not that it's the same to Marvel, but it's like if Marvel's kind of dealing with that right now, you kind of want to stay in your own lane. And I could see Sony being like, "Ooh, you know what's working really well with Across the Spider-Verse? This internalized stuff. let's talk more about this and those fears." But I do think with like KNULL in that situation, you're gonna have to come to it eventually. That is your biggest bad. That is what is set up right now. There is no other person in your guys' universe that is worse than KNULL showing up, and you already have the symbiote. So it just seems like you should be going that direction. And I think they know that. I think they're planning out ahead of time, and they're doing that. And I do think they're going to kind of approach the topic a little bit in Madam Web, but not as hard as they're going to hit it in Venom 3. So I think they're afraid of it, but it's coming. More interested in who's going to be the one writing it.
It's the difference between slasher horror and like ghost stories, right? Like, is your ghost story a Scooby-Doo ghost story where the ghost is revealed to actually be a person who's like trying to take over some real estate? Because that's one form of horror, but there's another form of horror where the person writing it is just kind of acknowledging, I don't have an explanation for where this ghost comes from, and there's just evil in the world, and it comes from outside of us, and we are just potential victims to it, so we have to stay vigilant. But there's another type of horror where it's just like, no, sometimes there are just bad people who do shitty things, and that can be scary to us.
Yes, I would love for them to touch that. I kind of think they're going to touch that kind of horror a little bit. I suggest that they might touch a little bit of that horror in Madam Web if they do include that villain from like the Ezekiel storyline that like eats Spider-Man. I don't think they're going to necessarily have someone literally in the Sonyverse eating a human being, but I do think there is going to be like a heroes type of trope of a supervillain that's like, oh, I absorb the power. And if he's there to take like a pregnant Mary Parker, that's dark. To be like, I'm going to kill this pregnant woman to get that baby. And I'm like, how are you going to do that with it not looking horrible? Like, how are you just going to make it scary? And it won't be Scooby-Doo-ish.
I think just in general, if you're going to be doing a superhero movie franchise, like, don't be afraid of going cosmic. Because that's like why people are there. I don't think that's just like a lesson that the X-Men movies and the Daredevil movies in the early years, like that's just one thing they learned is that like you really limit yourself of just like trying to ground it. It worked for Christopher Nolan because he is the best filmmaker working right now. If he ever wanted to expand the Dark Knight franchise beyond those 3 films, like we already saw when he tried to expand it in The Dark Knight Rises, it gets really hard if you try to like go beyond Gotham City. Like the Superman could not exist in Christopher Nolan's universe. Green Lantern could not exist. It would just break his world too much.
Are you saying that Sony shouldn't go beyond it? Like they're going to go to
I think they should. I think they should. I think they're trying to just do like simple, small stories, but their characters are not simple or small.
100%.
I want to end this with a new segment that I'm just going to call What We're Watching. Because like people ask us like, well, will you cover this show? Will you cover like whatever? And I'm like, no, probably not on new Rockstars, but we're still watching these other things. So I just want to like give people a chance to like hear us talk about other stuff. So other stuff I've been watching this week. For me, I watched the finale of The Curse. I watched True Detective Night Country episode 1, and I watched the Fargo finale, and I have loved all 3 of them.
And I have loved all 3 of them. Do you like the new Fargo, this season of Fargo?
This season of Fargo has been freaking great. Juno Temple was so good on this show. John Hamm was so good. Joe Keery was so good. Everyone. The character
Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's
Ula Monk is like my new favorite character in all the Sin Eater of that show. It's just amazing. I mean, I didn't watch season 4, the Chris Rock season. I heard it wasn't very good.
I heard. My mom told me it wasn't good. I'm trying to catch up on a lot of stuff, to be fair. But I just got my Showtime to watch The Curse because enough of you guys are talking and yelling at me about it. I watched the first 2 episodes. I'm nervous about watching it. I'm like, I have to be in a good mood. Not good mood, but like a mood for Nathan Fielder. So I I'm scared about watching it.
It's an anxiety, like, so it was
Perfect.
co-produced by Nathan Fielder and Benny Safdie, and the Safdie brothers are the guys who did Uncut Gems. So if you remember how uncomfortable watching Uncut Gems felt, this is similar. It's like these guys are experts in depicting anxiety, and it's just like, God, you have to be in the right mood for it. It's sometimes funny. It's just such a good satire of gentrification and white saviorism. But its finale goes to such a bizarre, absurdist place that it just breaks your brain.
The Uncut Gems, the best part was when the movie was done. I was stressed, sweating, and having a hard time. But yeah, I got Showtime for that. I watched the first 2 episodes of Has Been Hotel on Amazon Prime because I love musicals. Oh. And I'm a huge, huge fan of that person's animations on YouTube. So I was very excited for Has Been Hotel. And I just started The Brother's Son. And it is much violent than I thought it was. It's on Netflix with Michelle Yeoh. I was not ready for that. But yeah, that's all I'm watching. I'm keeping up with, this job has us watching a lot of stuff. So I'm like catching up on a literal like poop ton of.
We'll leave it there for this week, but let us know in the comments below what you think Venom 3 is going to focus on and whether it should steer all the way into the heavens to come face to face with KNULL, or it should be a multiverse story, or there should just be 3 Venoms. Or maybe there's a third voice in Tom Hardy's brain that's out there. There's like his voice, there's Venom's voice, and there's like a third dormant voice that comes up, and that's what the 3 is. We'll leave it there for this episode of the Sneak Peek. But thank you again to Air Up for sponsoring this video. Your flavor pods have been delicious, but it's just water that I'm tasting, but it's like my brain is making me think that it's flavored water. This is a wonderful sponsor. Thank you. And follow, yes, they have all different kinds of flavor pods. Grab one for yourself. The description has the link. Follow New Rockstars on Twitter. Follow Jess at Lulu_Clemens. Follow me at EA Voss, and we will see you all next week. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye, everybody.